Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Make sure to click down below and subscribe to the Big LEZ'S League community. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to be going through what spots in the Origin sides are up for grabs going into the 2025 season. We're going to do this for every NRL team as well, going through the off season as well. But I thought I'd start with the Origin teams and do something a little bit interesting there. We might do the international sides if we do get a chance, but I thought I'd start with the Origin sides, move into the NRL sides, and then if we get a chance, we'll do the international sides as well, like Australia, Tonga, Kiwis, etc., etc. But that's a little bit further down the track. I thought this one would be a little bit interesting, though. Obviously, a lot of discussion mainly around Moses and Cleary, who's going to take that number 7 jersey, which we'll talk about too in a second. But I've pretty much done a depth chart here of every single position, including number 14. And I've gone through the depth in that position, or at least the guys most likely to take up those spots. Haven't included everyone, but I've gone through the guys that are most likely. If you want a more in-depth chart, if you can scroll down further enough, you will find it on the Instagram. Otherwise, it is pinned on the TikTok, Big LEZ'S League podcast on TikTok, Big LEZ'S League _ on Instagram. Make sure you go and give them both a follow. But let's get started, though. Fullback jersey. In regards to the depth here, we've got Tedesco, Edwards, Pappy, Drinky, Trell, and Turbo in no particular order. Edwards is obviously the favourites. Do I think this jersey is up for grabs? Not necessarily. I think that Edwards is the favourite going into next season. I think that he will definitely have that jersey unless there's an injury or a little bit of a slump in form, which I just think is impossible with Dylan Edwards. Even a 5 or 6 out of 10 for him is around 150 to 200 metres a game and just absolutely killing it in absolutely everything. So Edwards, for me, keeps that jersey. Teddy close behind, but I think that his time in the international arena is slowly coming to an end. Pappy, Drinky, Trell, Turbo, they'll probably hop into the fullback jersey if there's an injury. But as I said, Edwards, he is the proper favourite going into next season's Origin. In regards to the wing jersey, my top 5 for the wing jersey would be Brian To'o and Zach Lomax as the favourites. Campbell Graham, Jacob Kiraz, Daniel Tupou would be the next few guys that I'd be thinking about for a wing spot. There's obviously other guys that can play a number of positions like Stephen Crichton, like Tom Trbojevic, like Matt Burton, like, a bunch of guys that can play a ton of positions in this side. But I've been really position specific for at least most of these positions. And I've picked out-and-out wingers here for this one. Other than Campbell Graham, I've picked out out-and-out wingers, at least in the Origin arena, to go into these spots. As I said, I think that To'o and Lomax would be the favourites. If one of those guys does get injured going into next year or has a bit of a slump in form, for me, I think that To'o's more locked in than Lomax is. But if one of those guys gets injured, I think the next guy up would be Campbell Graham. He was in that arena not too long ago. If he has a really good start to the year, I think that he could earn himself a spot there on that right wing. Kiraz would be closely behind, and then Tupou closely behind that. Let us know in the comments if we're forgetting about anyone as well, but those would be my top 5 in no particular order, other than obviously To'o and Lomax, last year's wingers, who again I think would be the favourites going into next season. Centres, Tom Trbojevic, Latrell Mitchell, Tony Staggs, Stephen Crichton, Matt Burton, Jesse Ramian, Bradman Best, again in no particular order. In regards to if anyone's locked in, Critter for me would be locked in. He can play either side of the field, which is extremely convenient because obviously there's a lot of guys here like Staggs plays mostly on the right, for example. Ramian plays most likely on the right as well. Best is more suited to the left. Burton's more suited to the left. So Critter being, that versatile in the sense he can play either side of the field really works when you've got all of these guys in here as well. Trell usually plays left. Turbo usually plays right. I think Critter's more locked in than what Bradman Best is, than what Latrell Mitchell is. But yeah, look, I mean, it's a real open sort of spot there. For me, centre would be a position that is up for grabs, both sides of the field. Critter, you could say that he's locked in, but for me, I still think that spot is up for grabs depending on form and stuff like that. Critter will most likely get a spot in this team. There's no doubt about that. I think that he is going to have a strong season next year, but I still think it's up for grabs, especially if Latrell Mitchell and Turbo are both fit, healthy, and having big seasons. Both of those guys could just go straight in to those center spots. You move Critter out to a wing. It could literally happen just like that. But yeah, I think that center position is definitely up for grabs. Moving to 5'8", I think it's another spot, to be honest, that is always going to be up for grabs. Luai is obviously the favorite, but you've got Burton, Brooks, and Cody Walker as the next guys up. Obviously, Luke Keary's gone off to the Super League, so he's not in that discussion anymore. Moses can obviously slot into the 6 jersey. Cleary can obviously slot into the 6 jersey as well. Hines could obviously slot into the 6 jersey, but I've been very position specific. So in regards to out and out 5'8", it's probably Luai, Burton, Brooks, and Cody Walker in order. Yeah, look, for me, I think it's going to be Luai. Just depending on that season with the West Tigers, it sort of leaves a little bit of opening there for another 5'8" to take that jersey, like a Burton if he has a big year with the Dogs, like a Brooks if he has a big year at Manly, even Cody Walker to a stretch. I know that he's on the older scale of things and you sort of want to build towards the future a little bit with these international sides, but if Cody has a big year and obviously Luai has a bit of a slump there at the Tigers or a slow start, maybe we do see Cody Walker slide in and grab a jersey in the number 6. In going into the halfback jersey, obviously Moses for me would probably be the favourite, and that's huge. Obviously, looking at Cleary and the career that he's had so far, Moses after his international raid for Australia and for New South Wales, more so for New South Wales, I think it does solidify him as a favourite going into next season so far. Without watching any games played, Moses is probably the favourite there. You know, obviously, if Cleary comes out and has the better year or the better start, he's obviously they're locked into the favourite. But Moses, for me, after what he did in that Origin arena and how dominant he was in that 7 jersey, he probably sits as a favourite. In my opinion, you'll probably see both in there, with Moses at the 7 and Cleary at the 6. But yeah, look, it'll be really interesting to see what they want to go for here. And, you know, the coach after Madge Maguire, what his idea is of how this side should be built. And obviously, if he wants to build for the future or if he wants to build the best possible side for the now. But yeah, for me, Moses and Cleary are probably going to be together in the halves. But I have been position specific in this little draft here that I've written up on this bit of piece of paper here. Front row, let's talk about it. Haas, Barnett, Lenu, May, Regan Campbell-Gillard, and Jake Trbojevic. That's Payne Haas, Mitch Barnett, Spencer Lenu, Terrell May, Regan Campbell-Gillard, and Jake Trbojevic. I'm regarding Jake Trbojevic as a front rower. I think that's where he's playing next season for Manly. For me, if I'm picking three to four players out of this list, it's probably going to be Haas, Barnett, and Lenu. But again, look, it will be really interesting to see what happens here. I don't think Jake Trbojevic makes it again. I think he is slowing down. I think you want a bit more of a mobile pack in there. He only did play 20 minutes. It was really good defensive start, and it is safe to have a guy like Jake Trbojevic in there to start the game. And Madge had a really good idea there, but I do feel like Gerbo, it is going to be a lot harder for him to get into this side going into the next one. I think that it'd be Haas, Barnett, and Lenu, the most likely 3 front rowers there in this rotation. Obviously, I'd probably pick maybe another back rower on the bench. You add the utility in. You only have room for the 3 front rowers, 3 to 4 front rowers there. So Haas, Barnett, and Lenu are probably the favourites. Terrell May, the smoky, depending on what club he lands at, and obviously how he plays throughout the season. But if he has another big year like he did this season, I think that he'll definitely be in the discussion for it. Regan Campbell-Gillard, depending on how he goes at the Gold Coast Titans, he's probably a lot less likely than these other guys, but definitely someone to consider. And then obviously Jake Trbojevic, he was the captain, the skipper in Madge's side. He obviously played, at the start of games for a bit of a defensive sort of style of play there. Not so much running the ball and being explosive, but just to handle the storm of the start of the game against Queensland. But yeah, I think that it'll be a lot harder for him to get into the side again. So Haas, Barnett, and Lenu for me would be the guys hopping into the starting front row spots, or at least the front row spots available in this 17. Terrell May, a bit of a smoky as well. But I definitely think that the order and obviously the rotation and the makeup I think is certainly up for grabs. So front row up for grabs. I'd say 5'8" at the moment is up for grabs, and centre is up for grabs at the moment out of all of the positions. Let's look at the hooker jersey. Reece Robson, Damien Cook, Blake Brayley, Connor Watson, Appy Coruscant. Those are my top 5. I think that if you want to put it in order, Robson's obviously the favourite. I think that he gets picked unless there's an injury. So I don't think this jersey's up for grabs. But Cook, that you'd probably go Damien Cook. I'd go Appy Coruscant just with the Origin experience and experience in general. Then Blake Brayley is a bit of a smoky into a Connor Watson, but he's more of a utility, but I've included him there at hooker, not being as position specific as I have for the rest of this list. But Connor Watson I'd have in there at circle as well, depending on if he does play hooker in 2025. As I said, Robson's probably the favourite. I don't see him losing that jersey unless there's injury. So Robson would be the pick for me. Let's move on to the second row jersey. Angus Crichton, Liam Martin, Hamole Olakau'atu. Those are the only 3 super likely guys for the back row jersey. I probably don't have Hudson Young in this circle. I think that these guys would be the most likely to get into the 17, maybe Hamole off the bench. But Angus Crichton, Liam Martin are probably the favourites for me after this series that they just had. I think they definitely are the favourites. Hamole either off the bench or in the reserves or in the squad. But yeah, look, I mean, they obviously went away from having him off the bench due to obviously him suiting a starting back row 80-minute role better. But yeah, look, it'll be really interesting to see what happens form-wise, injury-wise, what happens there. But Angus Crichton, Liam Martin, most likely the favourites. I don't have Hudson Young in this circle. I don't think he provides too much impact off the bench. Defensively, very safe. I just think that he doesn't provide as much impact as what you're going to get from some of the other front rowers and forwards that you can have off the bench. A lock forward jersey, it's just Murray and Yeo for me. There's no one I'd probably be chucking in that jersey over or under those guys. Murray's the favourite. I don't think this jersey's up for grabs. I think that Yeo has suited that lock forward off the bench sort of role or front row role off the bench better in the international arena, whether that be Origin or international football in general. So I'd be having Isaiah Yeo there off the bench with Murray at starting 13. I think Murray at off the bench just hasn't really worked. I think that he starts the game well, a bit of leg speed against some tired forwards as well. Around the 20-minute mark, it's just so valuable. So Murray, for me, I'd have him at 13, Yeo off the bench as last year. And then we've included the 14 jersey in there as well. Watson, Wishart, and Hines are the top 3 14s that I'd have. Hines, not really that likely after his previous Origin stint there in the 7. Granted, there's a lot of pressure on him. Granted, he's probably a better 6 than he is a 7. I just think he's had his opportunities now in the Origin arena. I think it is going to be unlikely to see him back in an Origin jersey unless there's injuries. But yeah, look, obviously, you know, you've got Watson and Wishart probably fighting it out for the 14 jersey. If Wishart has another big season like he did for Melbourne this season past, I think that he's definitely in the discussion, pending Watson and injuries and stuff like that. If Watson's injured and Wishart's had a big year, I'd almost lock him into a 14 jersey. You know, granted, you can obviously chuck one of these other hookers in there as well, depending on the mindset of the coach that comes in. Whether that be Dean Pay, whether that be Trent Barrett, whoever that is, they're the favourites at the moment from what it sounds like. But you could obviously chuck Cook, Coruscant, Blake Brayley, one of those guys into that 14 jersey if you want to go for that hooker 1-2 punch as well. And, you know, Appy Coruscant would probably be the favourite in that regard since he can play a few other positions in your side as well. If there's an injury in the halves, he can come in and slot in there as well. Watson's the favourite. But if he's injured, Wishart, Coruscant, one of the other hookers, it's definitely up for debate there as well. So I think that out of all of the positions that are up for grabs the most would be the centers. I think that that's completely up for grabs. Critter's probably the favourite and probably going to get a center spot, but I think that is up for grabs. 5'8" would be up for grabs for me. I don't think Luai is necessarily locked into that jersey. I also think that halfback could be up for grabs. It's going to be between Cleary and Moses. Depends who has the better start to the season. But then as well, you could obviously see both of them in there, as we said, with Moses at 7 and Cleary at 6, or vice versa. I think the makeup of the front row is obviously up for grabs. Who starts, who's off the bench, but I think it will be Haas, Barnett, Lenu. Hooker, I think's locked in. Back row, I think's locked in. Lock's locked in. Utilities locked in. So it's really just centers and 5'8", and maybe the makeup of the front row that is up for grabs. Let me know what spots you think are up for grabs. Is fullback up for grabs? Do you think Teddy is still a shot at getting a spot over Dylan Edwards? Do you think that Pappy, Drinkwater, Trell, or Turbo could be getting that spot as well? I don't think so, but let us know what you think in the comment section below, and any spots you think are up for grabs going into the 2025 Origin Series. We're going to do the same thing for Queensland a little bit later on in the week. But make sure you hit the subscribe button, become a part of the big LEZ'S League community, and we'll see you guys in the next one.